Working as a security guard at Area 51 isn't nearly as exciting as it sounds. There are no flashy UFO sightings or secret government experiments that you overhear. Most of the time, it's about routine patrols through long, sterile corridors and staring at the same old security monitors, watching for the smallest flicker of movement. Everything is locked down tight, as you'd expect. The real strange stuff happens so deep inside the base that people like me aren't allowed anywhere near it. I never thought I'd come across anything out of the ordinary until that one night. Every facility has its peculiar spots, and Area 51 is no different. Some places are downright eerie, but there was this one hallway way down in the lowest levels that we all knew about but rarely spoke of. We called it the Dead Hallway. It wasn't a part of the routine rounds, and unless you were specifically called there, you didn't go near it. At the end of the Dead Hallway was a door, room 34D. Most of us only ever saw it in passing, and the older guards were tight-lipped about what it was used for. Some said it had been sealed off after some experiment went horribly wrong. Others speculated it was where they kept objects too dangerous for even the regular scientists. The truth was, no one really knew. The door was always locked, the keypad next to it unresponsive, like the room had been forgotten. Until one night when everything changed. It was around 3:30 a.m., and I was halfway through my graveyard shift. The base was quiet, almost unnervingly so, except for the usual hum of the ventilation system. I was in the security monitoring room when an alarm went off. The display in front of me flashed red, showing that a door had been breached in the lower levels. I looked closer at the screen and felt a chill run down my spine. The door that triggered the alarm was room 34D. It had to be some kind of mistake. That door had been sealed off for years. I radioed the control room to report the glitch, but the voice on the other end told me to check it out in person. No one likes walking the dead hallway, but orders are orders. I grabbed my flashlight and made my way down, the sense of dread in my stomach growing with each step. As I descended into the lower levels, the air became cooler. The hallway lights were dim, flickering as if they struggled to stay on. The walls seemed to close in the further I went, and I felt like I was being watched, though I knew I was completely alone. By the time I reached the dead hallway, the air was so thick with tension it was almost suffocating. Room 34D stood at the end, its door slightly ajar. I stopped in my tracks, my pulse pounding in my ears. That door had been sealed for as long as anyone could remember, but now it was cracked open, as if inviting me inside. My instincts screamed at me to turn around, to call for backup, but something about the situation, some strange pull, made me move forward. The door creaked as I pushed it open. Inside, the room was almost completely dark, illuminated only by the flickering glow of an old television set in the middle of the room. It was one of those ancient, boxy TVs from the 80s, the kind you'd see in a thrift store. The screen was filled with nothing but static, crackling softly in the silence. I hesitated at the doorway, my flashlight cutting through the dust-laden air. There was no power source, no wires connected to the TV, yet it was on. It buzzed with static like it was caught between stations, but it was more than that. As I moved closer, I could see something in the noise. Shapes, flickering just out of focus. Felt like staring into another world. I knelt down to get a closer look, and that's when I saw them. People. No, not people, figures moving through the static. At first, they were little more than blurry silhouettes, their movements jerky and unnatural. But as I squinted, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, the static seemed to clear. The figures became sharper, more defined, and they were walking toward me. I stood up quickly, my heart racing. My brain scrambled for an explanation, an old recording, some kind of optical illusion, but I couldn't shake the feeling that these figures weren't just images on a screen. They were real, and they were coming closer. One of them stopped, its featureless face turning directly toward me. Even without eyes, I could feel it staring into me, through me. My breath caught in my throat as its hand reached out, pressing against the glass of the TV screen. The screen rippled like water. I stumbled backward, my flashlight trembling in my hand. The figure pressed harder, its entire arm pushing through the screen. The TV wobbled, but the glass didn't shatter. It stretched like the screen had turned to liquid, allowing the figure to pull itself out. My mind refused to process what was happening. The figure, thin, elongated, and draped in shadows, stepped out of the TV with jerky, unnatural movements. Its head twitched from side to side, and though its face was a blur of darkness, I could feel its attention fixed on me. I fumbled for my radio, but when I pressed the button, all I heard was static. The same static that filled the room, blending with the soft crackle from the TV. Behind the first figure, more were emerging. They slipped through the screen like smoke, their bodies writhing as they took shape. They whispered as they moved, voices crackling like broken transmissions. "You shouldn't be here." The words crawled down my spine, a horrible chorus of voices layered on top of each other. I backed up toward the door, but before I could reach it, it slammed shut on its own. The room was suffocating, the coldness biting into my skin. The figures moved closer, their distorted forms shifting in and out of focus. Their whispers grew louder, overlapping, until it felt like they were inside my head. "You shouldn't be here." My body felt heavy, the air thick and oppressive. The first figure extended its hand toward me, and when it touched my arm, I felt a jolt of freezing pain shoot through my entire body. It wasn't just cold, it was like my very essence was being drained, like the thing was feeding on me. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something on the TV screen. It wasn't just static anymore. The screen now showed a reflection, a perfect reflection of the room I was standing in. But it wasn't just the room. It was me, standing in the exact same spot. Only the reflection wasn't right. The me on the screen looked twisted. My features were stretched, distorted, like something had smeared my face across the screen. My eyes were hollow, and my mouth was twisted into a grotesque grin. The figure in the reflection moved on its own, stepping toward the real me. As it reached the edge of the screen, it smiled that awful, unnatural smile, and I felt a pull, like something was dragging me toward the TV. My vision blurred as the figures around me closed in. The static filled my ears, louder now, deafening, like a swarm of angry bees. The room seemed to warp, the walls closing in on me, and in the midst of it all, I felt myself being pulled toward the screen. I was being dragged into the TV. My body stretched, distorted, the cold figures watching with their empty eyes as I was swallowed by the static. My reflection, my twisted, grinning reflection, stepped out of the screen as I was pulled in, and then everything went dark. When I woke up, I wasn't in the room anymore. I was inside the static. The world around me was a cold, flickering void, filled with shadows and shifting images. I could see the real world vaguely through the haze of static, but it was distant, unreachable. I tried to move, but my body felt strange, like it wasn't really mine anymore. The figures were here too. All of them. They were clearer now, their faces more defined. I recognized some of them, old guards, people who had disappeared without explanation. Their eyes were wide with terror, their bodies twisted and frozen in time, trapped in this endless, shifting void. I was one of them now. I don't know how long I've been here. Time doesn't work the same in this place. The static world is endless, a never-ending loop of half-formed images and flickering shadows. Every so often, I see the real room 34D, from inside the TV. I see the door, the empty hallways, and sometimes I see the guards patrolling outside. They never notice me, but they will. I know they'll come. Sooner or later, someone else will be sent down that hallway. They'll find the door ajar just like I did. They'll see the TV, the static, and the figures. And just like me, they'll be drawn in. The cycle will repeat. It always does. And when they come, I'll be waiting. Waiting in the static just like the others. Waiting for them to join us. Forever.